the OVATION Award goes to Abdul Hamid Royal, Gospel At Colonus.
No kidding.
Abdul Hamid Robinson Royal was born Reginald Royal in a middle-class family whose home was full of music. His parents were very musical, though neither pursued that professionally. He started early.
I started plunking on the piano maybe around 4 or 5, and in my house, if you showed any kind of interest, it was immediately supported. So they took me to the conservatory where I was introduced to Toba Kramer, my first piano teacher. And she, many auditioned for a kid to see if it was just, their parents pushing them. And that set the course for the rest of my life. I always knew that not only was I going to do music, but music was a part of who I was. There was no kind of separation between the doing of music and the being of the music.
The native Milwaukeean says that growing up in the city was a great place for him.
The arts were very, very strong, and I was an artistic kid. So there was the Milwaukee Symphony, the Milwaukee Ballet, the Music for Youth Symphony Orchestra, the Florentine Opera Company, tons of gospel choirs, community choirs, lots of theater. It was a great place for me to grow up.
Was Milwaukee very segregated then?
Yes. I mean, it was, as it is now, incredibly segregated. But because I moved through those worlds, I experienced it, I think, in a different way than a lot of people.
How so?
Well, I was born in a black church. By definition, the black church was predominantly Black American, or some people call it African American. So I had a very, very strong spiritual grounding from people who had lots of life experience and spiritual experience in the Black or African American tradition. I went to predominantly white schools. I moved in predominantly white circles with my music. The conservatory, the Music for Youth Symphony Orchestra, high school band. Those were predominantly non-African American or non-Black American environments. And so I spent, much of the week in non-Black environments. And then on the weekends, of course, we would go to church. And that was a sacred space that honored, sort of the Black tradition.
He graduated from Whitefish Bay High School and went to Oral Roberts University, but he returned to Milwaukee to get his bachelor's degree at the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music.
It was an incredibly supportive place. There was a healthy competition because everybody was really, really working on their craft, whether it was in the classical area or the jazz ensemble.
He got his bachelor's from the conservatory and went to Northwestern University to get a graduate degree in conducting.
I left grad school and moved to New York and was playing an audition for someone. They didn't get the job, and the guy who was directing it at the time was a guy named George Faison.
Faison hired him to work on his homage to the Apollo Theater. The Apollo, it was just like magic. The experience made a lasting impression.
Timothy Graffenreid, who was the musical director who I was assisting, turned over the vocal arrangements to me and said, do these arrangements. And whatever I could come up with, the singers could do. I watched George choreograph. Whatever he choreographed, the dancers could do. I watched the costume designers, all of it, and I thought, oh my God, if this is what New York is, if this is what this is about, I'm in. But my first Broadway show was a show called Truly Blessed. Written by a woman named Queen Esther Morrow. And I did music, additional music and arrangements for that. And then, my career just kind of took off after that. I was mentored by incredible people in New York. Linda Twine, who did The Lady and Her Music with Lena Horne and many, many other shows, kind of took me under her wing. And really, and a gentleman named Burl Red, between the two of them, we used to call him Daddy Burl. Burl Red and Linda Twine, along with George, really steered my New York career.
He became the musical director for a number of shows on Broadway, including Five Guys Named Moe. And he's toured nationally and internationally.
While I was in New York, I took Sophisticated Ladies to Europe. I did Jelly's Last Jam, took that on its first national. Smokey Joe's Cafe, its first national. And I enjoyed that because what it allowed me to do was I learned the shows in New York, had an opportunity to really sort of dig myself into the material in the city. And then I love traveling. I got a chance to see all my friends around the country and around the world on somebody else's dime.
His travels and experiences brought about a religious conversion.
Something happened. I encountered a body of literature that began to sort of expand the ways that I began thinking about God and who I was and all that. And that was Islam. There was no crisis of faith. There was no fight. There was no I'm angry. There was no resentment. There was no anything. It was an expansion. And so I call it an embrace. I embraced Islam. And Islam embraced me. And it was tough for a lot of people because I was a clergy person. So what do? You know, you don't believe this anymore? Or it's like, no, I believe this and I believe this. And so that was kind of, it was a triumphant moment for me because, as I often say, I didn't come to Islam because I was broken. I came to Islam because I was fixed.
I've seen so many faces leave life stays, go away.
Abdul wrote and performed this song for Broadway Care's Equity Fights AIDS benefit concert. It's among his favorite compositions. More recently, he's been home as the musical director for 2 productions with the Milwaukee Rep, Sirens of Song and Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill.
I love what I do. And gratitude is an action. So the way that I show God that I'm grateful for what it is that I've been given is to do it. And to do it with the passion, clarity, to the best of my willingness and ability, and to keep trying to perfect my craft.